I'm gonna tell you guys a very scary story. The activity that's been happening in here, I think is getting like so intense. Obviously, other people are seeing it, so let me explain. Last night, I'm walking around, I'm like cleaning my house, like just getting everything together for the week, right? And I keep seeing something out of the corner of my eye that I know is not like something human. If you kept up with me, you know there is a lot of paranormal stuff happening in my place. And so I'm just trying to ignore it, trying to ignore it, I'm trying to ignore it, right? I'm in my kitchen, and like my kitchen has like a cutout like space where you can see the living room. So it's all very open, right? It's like a wooden like cutout. And I'm in my kitchen, and my back is turned to the living room, feel like something is standing behind me, and I'm like, ugh, I feel like something is making its way towards me, and I hear like some really strange grunting sounds, and almost like something is being dragged, but it wasn't too loud. That's what the spirit in my house has been doing. It's very vocal, it's very eerie, it makes very weird noises, it's sluggish, it like crawls. Everything terrifying you could ever think of is what's happening to me right now in my house. Like a real life scary movie. So anyways, I just start praying out loud, right? I'm like, God, like calling out to God. I'm like, I don't want to do this right now. I don't want to deal with it. Then I feel okay. So I'm like, you know what? That was a lot. I'm going to go take my dog on a walk really quick to get my mind off of it. I take my dog out. My neighbor is standing right outside my patio when I take my dog out. And he's like, hey, can I talk to you for a second? I was like, yeah, like, is everything okay? And keep in mind, I'm home alone, by the way. I feel like I need to preface that no one is in my house at the time. So this couldn't have been anyone. And I know it's not real life intruder, right? He said, I just saw something so weird through your blinds. I'm not trying to sound creepy, but I have to tell you what happened if you're open to it. I'm like, oh my God, okay. He's like, I wasn't trying to like look in. I know this guy's not like a weirdo or anything, you know, but he was like, I'm not trying to look in your apartment or anything. Like my dog is going to the bathroom right outside and your blinds are open. And I did a double take because I saw something that disturbed me. And I was like, okay, well, what'd you see? Like, what happened? He tells me he sees a shadow of a person, but its body is like, what's the word? Distorted and gross looking. And he said it looked like something was like pulling its shoulder up, and then it kept falling down and standing up. And he said, I swear to God, Riley, it's like I could see through it. At first I was freaking out. I was about to start banging on your window because I saw you were in your kitchen, like back turned, and I saw something in your living room. Looks like it was trying hard to get to you, and I thought it was a person at first, and then I realized I could see through it, and what I was seeing was not human. You're probably gonna think I'm crazy. I'm not trying to scare you. And I was like, dude, like, yes, you scared me, but you don't sound crazy. And I was like, I've been dealing with paranormal things in my house recently. And his face just went like white, like a ghost. He was like, I don't know how to describe what I just saw or what just happened, but I'm going to pray for you because I have never seen anything like that in my life. Like, he was like, it was literally like it was trying so hard to come get you, and then it just disappeared. Like, it was struggling so bad to make movement to come to you. He's like, he couldn't even explain it. Like, I'm trying to think of what he exactly said. He's having so much trouble, like, getting his words out to me of what he just saw. But we're moving in like a week, so I'm really hoping whatever is here stays in this damn unit and don't follow me. Because I am so tired of living like this. Ugh. That's all for now. Make sure if you think something's behind you and you might just be tripping, you might not be tripping. And there might be something actually behind you. That is not from this world. Bye, guys.
Guys, listen to this story that one of my followers sent me. She titles it Little Gnomes in My Closet. And I'm going to be honest, I was hooked just by reading that title. In the early 70s, this little girl and her entire family were moved to a really nice home in Alaska. She said right off the bat, things were kind of off with the house and things would go missing or disappear and the parents would blame the kids, but she says she swears it was never them. So she was 4 years old at the time and she shared a bedroom with her older sister and they shared a bunk, her older sister in the top and her in the bottom. They had a huge walk-in closet also, and so half of it was for their clothing, but the other half was a really nice area for them to have all their toys inside. It's kind of like a playroom. So she has a Barbie townhouse, and she said that despite the fact that she was pretty young, she always took very good care of all her dolls and was very particular about where she placed them the night before so that she could remember the next day where she left off in play. She remembers having Barbie in her own bed. Ken, he had to sleep on the couch because, ew, that was gross at the time to her. Boys and girls were not allowed in the same bed. And then Skipper had her own small bed in her own separate bedroom. She said that all the rest of the dolls and the clothes and accessories and all those things were in another separate container. She also mentioned that there was a lamp mounted to the wall inside the closet, kind of over the area where she would play. And she said she kept this thing on all the time. During the night, if she were to wake up, she could see the light illuminating from the closet. She said one night she ate dinner, played with her dolls a little bit, and then went to bed. And then middle of the way through the night, she woke up to the sound of some rustling going on in her closet. So she sits up and she looks over, and from what she can see, she doesn't really see anything. So she kind of shrugs it off, turns around and goes back to bed. So the next morning she wakes up to go play with her dolls, and she notices that they're all in the wrong position. She said Barbie was now at the stove, Ken was at the kitchen table, and Skipper was in the living room on the couch. So right away she assumes that was her sister who moved it. She had to be the sound she heard rustling in the closet the night before, so she runs out and confronts her sister. So her sister fully denies it, says it wasn't her, and she doesn't believe her, so she accuses her of lying, and then says, "Don't touch my stuff without asking." She does not like when her things are played with and not put back correctly, especially when nobody asks. A few days goes by again and nothing really happens, but then the one day she wakes up in the morning, goes to play with her dolls again, and notices they're out of order again. And she is immediately angry and goes to yell at her sister, but then she remembers something. Her sister hasn't been home that weekend. She's staying at a friend's house, so it could not have been her. And now this is a little bit weird. So she goes and tells her mom about it, but her mom's just like, it was probably you and you just forgot, or maybe you woke up and were like sleepwalking and played with the dolls in the middle of the night. But she knew that absolutely was not her, so it's a little bit weird. So that night she went to bed, and in the middle of the night she woke up again to the sound of rustling. So she sits up and looks, and she can't quite see into the closet because there's a door kind of halfway shut. So she gets up out of bed and she slowly creeps over to the closet and peeks around the door. She says what she saw, she could not have ever fathomed could be real. She saw 3 little gnome-like creatures, each one of them with one of her dolls in their hands, playing with them. She said the one that was holding Barbie was sitting down on his butt and just combing her hair and giggling. And then he smelled her hair and smiled and kept on brushing her hair while giggling. And the other 2 were sort of walking around playing with Ken and Skipper. She describes them as having little potato-shaped heads and skin that was tan but almost like leather in texture, and sort of deep dark eyes. They had big ears, and their noses were small and rounded but wide. Their fingers were long and gnarled but had stubby nails. And she said they each wore something different. She said the one playing with Barbie had these green pants on that were kind of like potato sack material. He had a dark dirty yellow shirt on with long sleeves and a rounded purple hat. He also had brown leather looking moccasin shoes, and she doesn't remember seeing any hair. She said the one playing with Ken was a little bit skinnier and taller than the first one. He was wearing a blue, dirty, long sleeve shirt, and his potato sack like pants were brown in color. He had similar shoes to the first one and a yellow hat that was long and hung down to his shoulder. He also had a beard that covered his neck but no mustache. So the one playing with Skipper she assumed was a girl because she was wearing a dress and she had long brown hair that went down to her shoe. Her skin was more pale and she had bright green eyes. She describes her dress as being orange, purple, white, and red checkered, and it gathered at the waist and then went down to her ankles. She had dirty white socks on, similar moccasin shoes to the others, but they had designs on the side. Oh, and she did not have a hat on. She said she wasn't scared, just curious, and she was in awe watching them. So she stood there for a few minutes watching, and then she kind of turned around, went back to her bed, and rolled over and went to sleep. Well, she was trying to go to sleep, and then she heard rustling. It was the sounds of them coming up to the bed. So she pulled her blankets up to her eyes and just squinched them even tighter, trying to pretend to be sleeping. She says it was quiet for a few minutes, so she slowly opened her eyes to see them down towards the foot of the bed, all standing there staring at her. She said again, she didn't really feel fear, just curiosity, and that goes for them and her. And then she just kind of sat up in bed and stared at them, and they were looking at her and she was looking at them. And then she said in a whispered voice, "It's okay if you play with my dolls. Just please, can you put them back where you found them?" She said, "Please don't hurt them or ruin them. I like pretty things too. I love brushing their hair and changing their clothes and playing pretend." And then she said the one that was playing with Barbie originally had smiled at her, and then so did the female. And then they just turned away and vanished in front of her eyes. She said every now and then she would hear them in there. She never saw them again, but would hear them, and she would even leave little snacks and drinks and gifts. And then the last time she ever heard from them was about a year later, when she woke up and went into the closet, and there was a little gift for her. It was a simple gold bangle, kind of like a bracelet. She said she doesn't know where they got it or how, but she thanked them out loud and then wore it every single day. Well, every day until they moved, and then she said it disappeared. And then she said she never heard from them again. She feels like it was their way of thanking her for letting them play with all of her things and for giving them snacks and drinks and little gifts. So she wants to know, what do you guys think? Do you think they were gnomes or something else? She also mentions that she understands that people will probably question how somebody her age could remember something in such detail and so vividly. And she goes on to say that she's very advanced for her age then. She can remember back to things that happened when she was 2. She was speaking in full sentences by the time she was 1, and she was able to read by age 3. She was very curious and inquisitive. And when she remembers things, even from a young age, they were always very vivid. I'm going to tag her in this, and I'm sure she'll be in the comments to see what you guys think. I think it's a charming story, and honestly, nothing would surprise me. All right, let us know your thoughts, and if you're new here, definitely follow for more creepy story time.
So this girl emailed me and said that she moved into a new house and that there was something in her attic. And so Kathy moved into a new house in Ohio in May of 2025. It was a nice medium-sized house, and at the time she lived alone. She said that the house had a pretty big attic, but that she never checked it because she has like this fear of attics and she doesn't really know why. But this made that fear very much worse. A couple months after she moves in, she notices really weird things happening, like things being moved around in the house that she knows she did not move. She did just try to convince herself that it was just the move and that she was just being crazy. Well, one day she comes home from work, and every single time she would come home from work, she would take a quick shower. So she goes to take a quick shower, and the toilet seat is up, and she never leaves the toilet seat up. So she's like, what the hell is going on? So she walks over to the toilet, and there's a candle in her toilet, a candle that she is certain that she did not put in there, that she's never seen before, and that she does not own. Now, she said that this candle was like a vintage candle. It was very small, but looking at it just made her skin crawl. She said that this is when she really started to realize that something was not right. She was not alone. She said that after she saw the candle, this scared her pretty badly. In fact, it scared her so badly that she wouldn't shower anymore. She refused to shower because she was so scared of the candle. So she ends up contacting her landlord, of course, because she has to be able to shower. And she asked her landlord, like, listen, some weird stuff is going on here. I found a candle in my toilet. Do you know anything about this? And she also tells her, like, listen, things are also being moved around. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. Are you coming to my house? Her landlord is then like, no, I have not come to your house. Actually, I'm visiting family 2 to 3 hours away, and I wouldn't drive all the way there to just pull a prank on you like this. So at this point, she is really scared because she's like, something is in my house. I don't know what it is. I do not feel comfortable. So the landlord offers to come inspect the house. Now, it's important to note here that her backyard was a forest, and there was a rumor going around town that her backyard, the forest, was haunted. The landlord then tells her that according to the people who used to live there before her, it was haunted, and they used to call the landlord all the time and tell the landlord that they were seeing shadows just lurking in the woods. So at this point, Kathy is like, okay, come on, I don't believe this. Never mind. You don't have to come inspect the house. She's just going to try to shrug it off at this point. But then things started happening that would make her believe that this was true. So the next day, after she had shrugged this entire situation off, she's just going about her day, and night comes around. She's lying in bed about to go to sleep when she hears footsteps in the attic, except for these aren't normal footsteps. They sound like hooves. It sounds like a horse is upstairs in the attic, not human. Just hooves. At this point, she is frozen in fear. So she's sitting there for about a good 2 minutes when finally she decides that she is going to ignore it again. She feels like she has to ignore this situation. She somehow goes to sleep. Not long after she falls asleep at all, she just hears thud. Just this massive thud in the attic. At this point, she's like, I have to get up and I have to go look and see what this is. So she gets up and she goes and looks around. There's nothing there. Nothing, no one, anywhere. So she just goes back to sleep. The next day, she wakes up in the morning and there's something wrong. Her back is burning. It's on fire. She said she had never experienced pain like that in her back ever. So she decides that she's gonna get up and she's gonna go look in the mirror. So she goes to look in the mirror, she turns around, she looks at her back, and there are just these massive scratch marks on her back from top to bottom. So she wants to call her landlord again at this point, but she's like, what am I gonna tell her? I know it wasn't her that scratched my back. There's nothing that she's gonna be able to do about this. So she doesn't, and things just get worse. And she's terrified in her own home. She doesn't even feel like she can get up and walk around in her own home. Things are moving around. She starts hearing footsteps, thuds, and this goes on for weeks until one night she's in bed as per usual when suddenly she hears this loud screeching sound come from the woods. I mean, it is loud and it is like it's terrifying. She immediately jumps up, she looks out the window, and she sees nothing. She said at this point she feared for her life. So the next day she wakes up and she's like, listen, this isn't safe for me to live here anymore. I have got to move out. Well, about a month later, she's packing to move out and she decides that she's gonna go check the attic for the first time. This is the first time she's ever checked the attic. Even when she got up that one night to check to see what was going on, even though the sounds were coming from the attic, she was too afraid to go up in the attic. So she walks over to the stairs, she goes to walk up the attic, she gets up the attic, she looks inside, and she sees a satanic symbol on the floor with candles surrounding it. The same type of candle that was in her toilet. She said she has never been so scared in her entire life. She did end up moving out of that house, and she said that she never looked back. She did say that she cut full contact with her landlord because she was pretty certain there was something wrong with her. She said that her energy always made her feel nauseous, like sick. So what do you guys think that was? This is really weird because I got this story, and then I also got another story about a cult, like this crazy story that I was gonna tell, but it's not paranormal. If you guys want to hear that story, it's insane. Like, it's a good story, but it's not paranormal, but it's crazy. If you guys want to hear that, drop it in the comments and I'll tell you it. This one, I don't know what it was because the only thing that makes me think that it wasn't like human is A, the hooves, and second of all, her scratches on her back. So how did she get those scratches if there was a human living upstairs, right? So what was going on here? This is like, that keeps freaking me out. It's my TV. I just want to know what you guys think was going on here because this is like one of the most confusing stories ever. Do you think it had something to do with her landlord? Do you think her landlord was in some type of like cult? Or do you think that maybe it was haunted or maybe both? Do you think it was the forest? There's so many things that I'm thinking and I don't know. The hooves are not a good sign though. Never a good sign. Drop all your thoughts, opinions, and suggestions in the comments below.
Let's read some astral projection stories. I have a C4 today because I'm exhausted. I'm about to start my period and I have a lot of content to make today, so this is getting me through. Also, I got this video idea from somebody that commented on my podcast on Spotify. I'm totally open to content ideas, so if y'all have any requests, just leave a comment and maybe I will do a video on your request. Okay, let's get into the stories. Found myself gaining awareness walking into a locker room of sorts. Talking to a couple of people. One Hispanic man, one woman. All of us were getting ready for a competition of sorts. I felt my focus sharpening as I asked what our attire would be. The man replied that it would be red, and I selected red out of the locker. Availability of things seemed to be on demand. So, in my suit with a red vest, I exited the locker room to an open market of sorts, where I was walking with a friend with awareness sharpening to the point that I thought to start feeling things. Holy shit, I could feel all of the textures. The floor was a kind of rubberized flooring. A nearby fern felt plant-like and wet, and this feeling around sharpened my focus and awareness to the point that it was damn near real. I was excited and turned to my friend in shock that I was experiencing this. He was excited too because apparently it was a milestone of sorts. He quickly encouraged me to write something down and maintain focus, but I had no pen, only a piece of paper on a counter nearby. I thought frantically for a solution, when I thought to materialize a pen to use, which worked. I was able to write down the address and read it back. Apparently this was kind of a test my friend had for me. When I looked back, I excitedly gave my friend a hug and was able to see what he really looked like. A normal-looking black guy, short hair, my height. We strolled around the market, and I asked him if we came here when we die. He laughed and told me that death implies destruction of sorts, and we can't actually destroy anything. After that comment, I lost focus and woke up. Posting on behalf of my boyfriend. He astral projects almost nightly, has done it for years. He told me that when he wakes up early and goes back to bed is when it happens the most. So, like 5 years ago, he woke up at 6 a.m. to call in late to work. He told them he'd be in 3 hours later at the first break, 9 a.m. He goes back to bed and flies to his work area and sees his boss wearing this green dress. Thinks nothing of it, sees everyone working, flies home, and wakes up to get ready for work. He gets to work and his boss is wearing the exact green dress. He had never seen her wear it before. Before this incident, he just thought he had super trippy dreams. This made him believe that he truly is astral projecting every time he has his flying dreams, as he calls them. I visited a world/planet recently that looks just like ours, except the people there had 3 huge fingers on each hand from what I noticed. Because of this, I immediately thought that most of their work is completed using machines and they must be highly advanced tech-wise. It's actually the first thing I noticed, because when I came down to look at the ground, I was asked by a lady that looked upset to not touch or enter. For the first time in my astral travel, there was no telepathic communication with a race or creation. I had to signal by touching my heart, extending my hand out to her to say that I was sorry, I meant no harm. I got the feeling that if I entered, I would not come back or have problems leaving. I was hesitant to get down and touch the ground, so I floated slightly above the ground. I entered their world using a back alley or something like that. I could see a high-tech city, very organized, not far off. All the buildings were tall and had blue light. She asked me not to interact with a group of kids she was guiding by pointing at them and saying no by giving hand gestures. I said hi to one. She looked traumatized and had a scar across her face. Red curly hair, looked about 8 or 9 in Earth years. She looked terrified, disgusted, and fearful. What's amazing is that there were different races in that group, just like on Earth. Still amazed and confused. I think on the spiritual evolution stage, they are evolving like us because of the use of language, but they are highly advanced technologically. I think that's what happens when a civilization is more advanced tech-wise. You can't have it both ways, I guess. I accidentally astral projected to a dirty dive bar. I didn't understand what happened until a few weeks later. There were many random faces and voices around me. I realized I didn't belong there and saw the exit. As I was walking towards the door, a man grabbed my arm and whispered in my ear, threatening to hurt and kill me. Then he stabbed me in the lower back. It shocked me with pain, and I woke up in my bed. My whole body was vibrating, and I felt like I got shocked with a cattle prod in my back. After that experience, I found out about astral projection and came to realize that I may have astral projected on accident, but ended up in a lower vibrational plane surrounded by negative entities. Since then, I have done a lot of research and have been learning to control the fearful emotions of that experience. Okay, I think I astral project all the time, y'all. Literally like every night. My dreams are so vivid. I can feel like physical pain, emotional pain. I have like conversations and grow connections with people in my dreams. But I swear I travel somewhere else, because even sometimes, like if I make a really good connection with someone in my dream, I will wake up missing that person, like longing for this person that I met in my dream. Anyway, let me know if you have ever astral projected.
I only tell stories from my emails. However, this story from my comments, I need to tell you guys about. For the reasons, I will not be sharing the commenter's name. However, I will be stating word for word what they left in my comments. Ex moved into a new flat. His landlord was extremely generous. Gave him and his daughter a children's bed, toys, and when he found out he had a partner, me, he gave him a standing mirror. These were from the attic above the new flat where he stored lots of items, yet he warned sternly not to go up to the attic with some excuse of intricate wiring and roofing and jam-packed items, also to prevent injury on my ex's daughter. Last night after moving, I was away. My ex placed a mirror set up on the bed in his daughter's room. She developed red marks all over her body and fell ill, so we thought maybe mosquitoes or bed bugs. Day 2, my asked his daughter to share our bed since she was unwell, and he just treated the bedroom and bed for bed bugs and insects. That night, the mirror fell on the sharp bed corner post, but somehow didn't break or scratch. He heard it and went into the room thinking it was rats or something. He took the mirror outside and positioned it in the lobby area, but resting on the wall and facing our bedroom. Then he went into sleep. That night, he kept hearing someone call his name and kept hearing slow footsteps. He had a dream someone kept trying to pull him into a door. He woke up in sleep paralysis, stated which stopped after his morning alarm went off loudly. Morning, he chucked the mirror and bed away and told the landlord it broke after it fell and the bed was full of bugs. Months later, my ex's daughter's birthday was coming up, so he had to inform the landlord like to host a small party as per the policy of the area, just so our neighbors are aware and aren't upset by the noise and people. The landlord approved it and informed other neighbors. He then promised to give my ex's daughter a big teddy bear. No! Which was up in the attic as well. However, have to be when he returns from the holidays. You can stay there. You can stay wherever you're at for the holidays. Don't even come back. Don't even come back. Excited. My ex and I weren't exactly keen on receiving another gift from him from a place he warned us against going into. But we let it slide and hope he'd forget by the time he returns. Weeks after the party, we had all forgotten about the pending teddy bear gift. I was asleep in the bedroom with my ex. I was phasing in and out of sleep, and I got into some kind of trance. Those dreams where you know it's not a dream, but at the same time you're not awake. Yeah, this is not good. I saw a huge, dirty, and dusty teddy bear to the left side of the room sitting, and the eyes were so dark. It started moving its arms and blinking, and I kid you not, it said in a kitty's voice, "You don't want me. I will be nice if you're nice to me. Now want me. Say you want me. Say you want me." Repeatedly, and each voice got angrier and demonic. It started moving towards me and I froze. My ex said I looked awake but frozen, looking at one corner of the room and then muffling words as if I was being restrained. I struggled to say Jesus. Eventually, I did jerk fully awake. I told my ex we had decided to pry open the attic. When we did, the next day, kid you not, it was the same teddy bear I saw. We saw sigils carved all around the attic and the items. We knew it was time to move elsewhere. Even the mirror we chucked away, it had someone's name etched on the bottom. Similar sigils, not to mention in the nighttime, I'd see a human-like figure, black shape, shift into a wild cat and crawl across our neighbor's building, watching us through the window at night. It was weird. This is weird. Guys, what do you guys think about this story? What do you guys think that was? And I hope they moved, because I don't see any other comment from them.
So for the sake of the story, let's call this girl Gloria. And this story is from Mexico. Gloria is Mexican. And growing up, her grandmother would always tell her, be careful what you wish for. More specifically, be careful what you wish for out loud. Because yes, God can hear you, but other things can hear you too. My grandmother used to tell me the same thing too. And especially if the wish is desperate. Because in the area in Mexico where she grew up, there's this belief tied to brujeria. Not a lot of people know about it, but it's when you make a desperate wish out loud, something might actually answer. Anyway, this was when she was 19 years old, living in Mexico. At the time, she was going through it. She had just found out that her boyfriend cheated, so her relationship ended. She was broke. At the time, her mom was sick. So it was a lot going on, right? She was very overwhelmed and going through it, obviously. And so one night, she had a breakdown and she's just like crying. And then the crying turned into like angry cry. And so she decided that I'm gonna take a walk to try and calm myself down. So she did. She started taking a walk. Mind you, it's nighttime. She didn't go like far from her house, but as she's walking, she still can't stop crying. And she ended up saying out loud, I don't care what it costs. I just want my life to change. Now, she said other things, but that was the desperate wish. She remembers thinking to herself after, like, damn, I just did what my grandmother just told me not to do, and I did it outside. But she was too sad to even, like, think further. Now, fast forward. That same week, she's at work, and this woman shows up to her job. Well, not to her job, but outside her job. She came and then she started selling herbs, candles, and little statues. Santa Muerte statues. If you don't know what that is, just like ask ChatGPT or Google or something. Actually, I think you can ask TikTok too. Anyway, so the woman comes outside her job for a few days, sells her stuff. She sees the woman is like high and by for about 3 days. And so the next day, the woman, comes back. She's selling her stuff. And, at the end of the day, she's about to go home. Gloria is about to go home. And then the older woman stopped her and say, hey, can I talk to you? Gloria's like, yeah, sure. And the older woman proceeds to tell Gloria, like, hey, it looks like something's weighing very heavily on you. You have a heavy energy. She believes that somebody put something on Gloria to ruin her life. So Gloria's like, oh, yo, like, what? I just broke up with my boyfriend. I'm broke. My mom just got sick. Yo, it sounds like somebody really is doing something to me. I thought it was just me. Lady like, nah, it's not just you, but I can help you. You need to get a cleanse. And so Gloria's like, yeah, like whatever to get this off me. Yes. Okay, so boom, they make a schedule, and the day comes. Gloria goes to, the older lady. Let's give her a name too. Let's call her Maria. So she goes to Maria's place, and Maria tells her that she's going to do something on her called limpia. Eggs, smoke, prayers, and at the end of it, the woman kind of like cracks an egg. She cracks an egg on her, and then she cracks another egg in a glass bottle. Not a glass bottle, just a glass. And so after she did that, she told Gloria, come look at this. So Gloria looked, and the egg that she just cracked had bubbles in it and like thin lines going up. So Gloria's like, hey, what does that mean? So Maria tells her, you made a loud wish the other day, and they heard you, and they were about to prepare to give you said wish, but you know what comes with that. So Gloria's like, oh my God. Like, I know. I was just so upset. After I did it, I thought about it because my grandmother always told me not to say that. And then Maria said, actually, I have a confession to make. So Gloria goes like, what you mean? Maria tells her, someone didn't really put something on you for real. I lied. And immediately Gloria's like, what? Maria's like, wait, but hear me out. Your grandmother came to me. I don't know this lady, but she came to me and she would not leave me alone until I went outside your house, not house, her job, outside your job, and make sure I did a cleanse on you. So Gloria's standing there like, what? My grandmother's dead. What are you talking about? And the lady's like, exactly. And the lady proceeded to tell Gloria things that she would never know had it not been for her grandmother. So then Gloria's like, oh shit, like, thanks, grandma. So Maria tells her, hey, you'll be fine now. You're fine, but your grandma said that I had to lie to you because knowing you wouldn't have just listened to me. And it's true, because after she got that cleanse, her life got drastically better. She got a job. Her mom wasn't as sick anymore. The boyfriend tried to come back, but she didn't even want to be with him no more. Her life was going too good. I know that's right, girl. Anyway, thank you for watching, bestie. Don't forget to let me know what you're eating in the comments. And please go support my song, okay? Thank you. I love you.
We listen. We don't get scared. And we don't judge. Let me tell you guys a story time of when I was friends with a ritualist. So me and this friend of mine knew each other from the villages, right? We grew up together basically, and he was like 3 years older than me, which is not a lot, We were still in the same age range. Growing up, me and him were actually very close, and he was raised by his grandmother. But, he was not necessarily the richest of kids. And, his grandmother had to make ends meet, like sell at schools so that they can have a better life, whatever. Fast forward 2 years ago, right? I meet this guy in the villages again, right? And he has a nice car. The house that he lives in, everything was beautiful. I was like, whoa, what? It's a whole thing. Like, my chommy is rich, guys. I didn't know what he does, but I was like, yo, like, wow. So, I was passing his house. I was like, damn, wow. Like, me and him had not spoken in quite some time, especially after high school, because like I said, I don't visit the villages like that anymore. Like, I go once in a while because I've got things to do, okay? So how we get there or whatever, I get to my grandma's house. Kanti, he was around and he saw my mom's car and he came. When he got there, man's is looking chic, man's is looking nice. I was like, hey, oh my God, you look so pretty. Like, what's going on? He's like, thanks, it's life. Life went up for him, whatever. He tells me that he is a music producer, so basically he creates beats and he sells them. I'm like, yo, I got it for you, my G, got it. He's like, thank you, Wabo. He tells me that he stays in a city that's not far from where I stay, Wabo. So he tells me, let's exchange numbers, you should come visit me. I'm like, yeah, obvious, I'll come, you know. I'm so happy for him, you know, the way he grew up, bruh. Like, this is nice. You know, he built a house for his grandmother. It's nice, like his grandmother is living life, you know, cute. Okay, fast forward, I go back to Gauteng. I go back to my boss, go back to my home, and I text him, I tell him I'm home. He's like, listen, this weekend it's you and I. You should come visit. I'm like, obviously. Hi, weekend comes along, guy comes to pick me up in this nice sports car. I'm like, hey. I was so happy for him, yo. I was genuinely so happy for him because what? I now have a friend that drives a nice car, and has a nice house. Get to his house and number one, something is wrong. Because he stayed in a house, he had a whole house that he bought. But no, once you enter that environment, like once you go through the gate, you just like, man, something is off here. For some reason, I don't know what it was. But I continued, you know me, Mos. We get inside the house and I'm seeing everything. It's beautiful, whatever, but something is off here, you know? So I look at him and he looks at me, he's like, what? I'm like, nothing, you know, your house is actually very nice. So he takes me around the house, he shows me the house, you know? And he starts to, you know, show me the house, explaining everything. And he's like, he's hungry. And I'm like, I'm hungry too. So he's like, let's get food. So I'm like, okay, let's go. He's like, no, stay here, you know, watch some Netflix. But I'm going to be quick. I need to actually go and deliver something. And when I deliver whatever I deliver to this person, I need to be alone. So you stay here. I will go. I'm thinking, okay, no problem, Baba. He's like, I'll be quick, I promise. I'm like, no, chill, no problem. Like I said, guys, something is off. This guy leaves there. And when he leaves, he locks the door, guys. Yo, I just knew something was wrong. Like, I just knew. So he locks the door and I'm asking myself, why? You know? I try to open the door and it doesn't open. I'm like, hey, maybe he just doesn't want thieves to get in. You understand? Cool. I'm watching TV and I can... In the corner of my eye, you know, when you look this side and you look, you still can see the door, but you're facing that way, right? I see something that's moving and I'm thinking, what is that? I look around the house and there is nothing. So I get up and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to use my audacity, my nerve to go and look around this house. So I don't really go look around the entire house, but I thought maybe it's an animal that's outside. I look outside, there's nothing. I look around the house, there's nothing. I look inside the kitchen, open the cupboards, nothing. You know what? Let me just stop panicking. I continue watching whatever I was watching on TV and I feel something put its hand on my shoulder. Hey! Mind you, this guy is gone. I look slowly. I'm like, I see nothing. But I can feel a hand on my shoulder. But I'm looking back. I see nothing. Jump up, Bobo. And then I sit back down and then I look around again. I see nothing. I'm starting to get scared. I call this guy like, my G, you better come back. Like something is off in here. I call him so many times. He doesn't pick up. He doesn't answer my phone call. Sorry. I get up to go drink water and like pour water on my face because I'm hallucinating. There's no way, you know, guys. I go and sit down on the couch and this time I see a figure. Now a whole, like, you can see that that's a person. It was a shadow, but you don't see that it's a person. It's sitting down. It looks at me and it's like, didn't so and so tell you what you're here to do? I'm like, no. You know, I answered it. Oh, I was scared. But at the same time, keeping quiet is not going to help me with anything. So it asks me again, didn't so-and-so tell you what you're here to do? I'm like, no, he didn't tell me anything. And he's like, well, oh, okay. Well, your friend brought you here for me. I'm like, for you? He's like, he or she's like, yes. Well, it was a male voice, so it was a he. And I'm like, you know, like, what? It was like, yeah, guys, this thing, after it said yeah, it jumped on the couch and now it's harassing me. It jumps on the couch, it starts like fighting with me because now I'm refusing to yield. How was I supposed to report that to the police anyways? I get off the couch and I start running around the house and this thing is chasing me. Mind you, I can't see what it is, but it's chasing me. I'm running around the house. I'm banging on the door so that somebody can, if somebody's outside, they can hear me. I run around the house. I try to open the door. Nothing. So Lucky, I tried to open the garage door, guys. Nothing. I'm running around the house. I'm thinking, as long as my feet will keep on running, I will keep running. So I ran upstairs. Luckily, like something was like, run upstairs, right? I ran upstairs and I opened the door, and the bathroom window does not have security butlers, so I could fit myself through that thing. And as guys, it felt like a horror movie. As I'm squeezing myself out of the bathroom window, this thing is pulling my leg. Did I not hit? I kicked it. I kicked air, guys, and nothing was happening. And it's still pulling me, so I am going. And eventually, I think it let me go because I was already out, and I jumped, and I almost broke my foot because it was really high. It was low-key high. I jumped out of the window and I stood at the gate and I waited for this guy. I waited and he did not come, guys. I waited and waited and he did not come back. So I'm gonna give you guys an example. He left at 1 and said he's coming back just now. I waited, guys, and it hit 4 p.m. and he still wasn't coming back. I think at 5, eventually he came back and he was like, he looked at me and I looked at him and he's like, are you okay? And I was like, am I okay? What do you mean, am I okay? Tell him the story, because as I was standing there, I realized that this person actually might have been trying to do something. Does that make sense? He was trying to do something, man. He was trying to do something to me, because what the hell? And he tells me, are you okay? And I look at him, I was like, how can you say I'm okay when you left here at this time and you're coming back only now that you're coming back? Why didn't you tell me that you're going to take so much time? He's like, no, I'm sorry, blah, blah. I was like, listen, I want to go home. He's like, yeah, but I brought the food. I'm like, I don't care. I want to go home. I was so furious. He asked me what happened. I was like, you don't know what happened. You know very well what happened. Don't come ask me what happened, Takes me back home. When I get home, guys, I wanted to block him, but I wanted to know, what exactly are you up to, right? Chilled. Later on that day, he calls me. He's like, I'm sorry about what happened. And I'm like, what happened? What exactly happened? Can you please walk me through what happened, right? Mind you, I'm scared. At the same time, I'm mad. He's like, listen, like, I basically am a ritualist, and this thing wanted the person that I love the most in the world, and it's you. The second person that I love the most in the world is you, and my grandma's first. And I couldn't give this thing to my grandma because, it wanted you. And I'm like, how? Love what? It's like, bro, like, we grew up together. I didn't have parents, and you showed me love. Like, you always, whenever I was hungry, you take me to your house and we would eat together. Even though I was a guy and you were a girl, like, you still showed me love. And I was like, yeah, it's called kindness, It doesn't mean so I showed you kindness, and then you have the nerve to take me to your thing. He's like, listen, I'm sorry, like, I didn't think things through. It said if I don't give it I'm going to lose whatever, so I needed to protect myself. Got you? And I was like, okay, no, you know what, no problem, guys. I slept with the light on for a whole 2 months because I was so scared. And I blocked him, guys. The conversation went on and on, but I blocked him eventually, and I stopped talking to him, y'all, because what? Oh, and another thing. That thing that wanted to sleep with me was actually his dad. So he went to his mom and dad's grave, and he's using those two, his parents, basically, spiritually, to get wealth. So that was his dad. And his mom sometimes, so people think that he's gay, but he's actually not gay. Sometimes he lures men so that thing can sleep with them. Or what if you love money in this country? You are in trouble, I'm telling you.
Let's read another true and scary story. This one comes from Alyssa, Face to Face with a Cryptid. For some context, I love anything scary. Scary movies, cryptids, scary stories about the unknown, wendigos, anything of the sort. I find them interesting and love hearing and learning about them. Back when I was a kid, I didn't necessarily like scary things. If anything, I was terrified. Living with my grandmother and grandfather, there was always something scary happening, like hearing heavy footsteps on the roof in the middle of the night, seeing really tall figures with glowing red eyes in our backyard, hearing mimics mimic my grandparents to call out my name at night when in fact everyone else, including my grandparents, were sleeping. All the scary things that would freak a 6-year-old out. So I was pretty accustomed to scary things, which is probably why I'm so curious about them now. So for the first part of the story, me and my family had just moved to Florida from South Carolina. I was 10 at the time. We had moved into a 2-story townhome, and everything was normal at first. Nothing happened the first few months living there, but over time I always felt the sensation of not being able to breathe, like a force on my chest. I'm not sure how to explain it, but it felt like someone was pushing hard on my chest. I would hear footsteps walking up and down the stairs at night, but I shrugged it off, not thinking too much about it, simply thinking it was my brother getting up to use the bathroom. And of course, he always denied ever leaving his room. One night, my mom, my brother, and I, and it was just us at the time, were all in my mom's room just talking. That was until I felt like I was being watched, so I turned my head toward the door and saw a figure, as tall as a door, which was pretty tall, I'd say about 7 feet, peeking from behind the door. Its face was white and unusually long. It had black eyes. It had hair which I describe as bangs and a bob from what I can remember. And as soon as it realized that I saw it, it was quick to pull back. But I wasn't necessarily scared because I wasn't alone, but more like caught off guard. I told my mom what I saw, but she didn't believe me, so I just shrugged it off. The second part, I was home alone. My brother was on his way home from work and we were planning on going somewhere after, so I was talking to my friend and my cousin, playing Roblox, having a good time, until I get that feeling that I'm being watched again. To describe the scene, my family room was right next to the kitchen, and there was a small corridor that leads to the bigger living room and dining room that was next to the stairs, and of course the lights were off, so I couldn't see past the corridor. The only light that was on was the kitchen lights and the TV. I chose to ignore the feeling, even though I'm already scared, because I kept looking into that corridor. Eventually I got hungry, so I got up to walk into the kitchen and get some crackers, and as I'm walking back to the couch, I look over and I see a white figure with bright white eyes, almost like it was glowing, crouching behind the stairs, looking at me. I know I wasn't imagining it because my eyes started to water, which happens every time I get scared, and in the moment I froze, and we stared at each other for like 6 seconds, before I pretended to not see it and walked back to the couch and continued talking with my friends. I didn't tell them what I saw because that would have freaked them out and myself even more. It wasn't until 30 minutes later my brother came home and I told him what happened. He was pretty freaked out as well, and we quickly left the house and didn't come back until my mom did because we didn't want to be alone. That was 6 years ago and I'm 16 now. I live in Georgia now, and we just moved out of a house where it was in fact haunted, feeling like we're being watched, hearing footsteps upstairs when no one was upstairs, closet doors opening on their own, the attic lights being turned on by themselves. It was so bad I didn't even want to go downstairs on my own at night or stay home alone, and I usually don't mind. And even now to when I was young, I was always drawn to them. Like if I see a corridor that's pitch black or any room that I constantly look back to, I can feel as if something is actually standing in the dark watching me. I could be delusional or imagining things, and I hope that's the case. So I've been experiencing the paranormal my whole life, but this specific experience was the first time I actually saw a cryptid, like face to face, and it sticks with me. That was my story. It's not much, but it freaked me the hell out growing up. I hope it was interesting enough to talk about. I love how like nonchalant you are. At the beginning, you were like, I just heard someone call out my name in the middle of the night, and I heard loud footsteps, and I see figures with glowing red eyes. And you're like, but I don't know if it's that interesting. In all seriousness, though, this is horrific, and the concept of like a white giant figure with a bob, I don't know if I've ever heard of a cryptid like that before. Like, I think, let me do some research. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not seeing any sort of cryptid that is like well documented that has a bob. This is so interesting and so spooky. Good to know that if I ever see a cryptid face to face, I'll just act like I don't see it, and hopefully it won't hurt me and it'll leave me alone. Thanks so much, Alyssa, for sending this story in. This one was super freaky. If you guys have any stories you'd like me to read, please email them to me and I will get to them if I can. And I will see you in the next one.
Weird spooky dating stories. Please keep in mind as you read this, I am a complete skeptic, constantly finding practical explanations for my weird experiences. At this time in my life, I was in a very dark place. Because my self-esteem was at an all-time low, my choices were sometimes very imprudent. I met this guy on the Hot or Not dating website, today's equivalent of Tinder. His name was listed as Abe Lincoln, lol, and he was in his early 20s, which was a bit younger than me. He seemed immature to me on the website, so I'm not sure what I was thinking when I gave him the time of day. We met up at a very well-known sports bar in Colorado, D&B. I was at least wise enough not to let him pick me up from my home. The second I said hi and gave him a hug, it felt like something punched me in the gut. I had a horrible feeling about this guy, but I thought, hey, what could possibly go wrong in a well-lit, highly populated area? We walked inside, and it was particularly sparse for a Friday night. As we walked down the main central aisle toward the back area, Abe was leading the way while I hung back a little. Suddenly, something unseen physically hit me, and I mean hard, on the right side of my head. It was so forceful that my hair whipped up over the top of my head and over the left side. Not only was I shocked, but it hurt. I instinctively spun around in a complete 360, looking everywhere behind me and on both sides. There was nothing I could have run into. The aisle was very wide and there was absolutely no one there, at least not in the physical sense. I was stunned and couldn't, for the life of me, figure out what had just happened. Was it someone from the other side trying to warn me about something bad to come? Or was it something darker, something that just wanted to mess with me? I know how completely stupid this sounds, but the more I talked to this guy throughout the evening, the more I realized he was a very unsettling individual. He told me bizarre things about himself that could cause 100 red flags to pop up. I was already shaken up from what had happened earlier and became completely paranoid, constantly scanning my surroundings, afraid of another unseen assault. Even though my feelings about myself weren't great at the time, my instincts were sharp. Somehow, I felt important enough to listen to them, and I told him I needed to leave. Did I escape something dreadful that was about to happen? Was I backhanded by a loved one from the other side who knew what would happen if I stayed any longer with Mr. Lincoln? Or was it just a random dark entity deciding to hit me for the hell of it in the most unexpected place? I will never know. Okay, that was absolutely something telling you to get out, because that's crazy. Especially it hit you hard enough where like your hair whipped over. Like, that's physical. And if it actually hurt too, I'm so glad you got out of there. Let me know in the comments if any of you have ever had an experience like this where not only were red flags going off, but spirit was like, get out of there. And if you have a crazy story like this, send it my way.
Let's read another creepy Reddit story. I grew up in Missouri, the kind of place where nothing ever really happens. Moberly was just another dot on the map. Brick buildings, railroad tracks, cornfields stretching out until the sky swallowed them. I'd lived there for my whole life, gone to the same high school my parents did, driven the same back road since I was 14. That's probably why it took me so long to realize something was wrong. It started during my junior year, late fall, when the sun went down too early and the air smelled like dead leaves and cold metal. I walked home most days instead of taking the bus. It cut through a shortcut behind an old abandoned building near the tracks. Everyone called it the feed mill, even though it hadn't been used in decades. One afternoon, I heard footsteps behind me. I slowed down. They slowed down too. I told myself it was just someone messing around. Kids from school like to scare each other back there. But the steps didn't sound right. They were uneven. Like whoever was walking didn't know how long their stride was supposed to be. Sometimes I'd hear dragging, sometimes a sharp tap, like bone on concrete. I turned around. No one was there. The air felt thicker, like before a storm, and the silence pressed in on my ears. I hurried home, heart racing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been watching me from just out of sight. After that, it happened more often. I'd catch movement in windows that reflected the street behind me, something tall and pale that vanished the second I looked directly at it. Teachers would call my name in the hallway, but when I answered, they'd swear they hadn't said anything. Once, I heard my mom call me from downstairs while she was still at work. That's when I started losing sleep. The night I really saw it was after a football game. I was cutting through the same shortcut, hoodie pulled tight against the cold. The moon was bright enough that I could see the feed mill clearly, its broken windows like dark, empty eyes. Something stood beside it. It was shaped like a person, but wrong in every detail. Too tall, too thin. Its arms hung almost to its knees, and its head tilted at an angle that made my neck hurt just looking at it. Its skin looked stretched tight and pale, like it had never seen the sun, but somehow knew what a human was supposed to look like. I couldn't move. It shifted its weight, joints clicking softly, and when it stepped forward, I realized it had been trying to stand like a person and failing. Each step was a correction. Then it opened its mouth. Hey. My voice. Exactly my voice. I felt sick. My hand shook so badly I dropped my phone. The thing tilted its head further, studying me, and its face pulled into something that might have been a smile. Its eyes reflected the moonlight, wide and empty, like it didn't understand fear, only imitation. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached my front door, fumbling with my keys, sobbing harder than I ever had. I didn't tell anyone. What was I supposed to say? That something was copying me? That it lived by the tracks? But sometimes, when I walk home now, I hear footsteps behind me that match mine perfectly. And every once in a while, when I pass the feed mill, I see fresh footprints in the dust. They're human. almost.
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Tea Spill. The series is brought to you by all things spooky and ungodly amounts of paranormal activity. Featuring my initial necklace, I also have my bracelet on that I wear every single day. No, I'm not kidding. It does not turn my wrist gray. And I get compliments on it all the time. I also get compliments on this. It would be a great Valentine's gift and it's inexpensive. Now onto the story. My name's Amanda and I'm from a small town in Ohio. My parents' house used to scare the crap out of me and my sister. I lived in the house since I was just a baby, maybe 6 months old, and weird things would happen. Loud sounds, creaking and slamming doors opening when they were locked, cabinets open in the middle of the night. I really remember multiple friends and one of my exes asking if people had died there because they felt or seen things. I don't like that. I don't fucking like that one bit. When I was 12, I switched to the room by the attic door. Now, why the fuck would you do that? Which I was used to the weird sounds, the stereo turning on even when unplugged till my dad threw it outside. I was fine, but my sister said that she was mad at me one night because she saw me at the bottom of the stairs and I wouldn't answer her. I guess she had kept screaming over and over, and then I popped out of my bedroom asking her what was wrong. Shitting, crying, and throwing up all at the same time. She just cried. I barely remember this, but she said that there was a little girl that looked like me on the stairs, and she wouldn't stop freaking out about it. I had multiple friends mention a little girl too. Then my ex mentions a man dressed in army attire that was in my dining room. He had seen a picture of him in my attic. The house was from the 1800s and had a bunch of things that people left. Me and my sister, being kids, wanted to learn more about our house, and it turns out that an old army guy unalived himself in the attic. And an unaliving happened in that house also of a little girl who had been unalived by her father, and her body stuffed in the exact closet I'd lock every night just for it to be open in the morning. Oh my fucking God! What? Oh God, that's so sad. My ex said that he had seen the little girl on the end of my bed one night just watching over us. But all in all, I never felt uneasy in that room. But the attic gave me the absolute creeps. We should have never found out what happened there, and I won't go to my parents' house anymore. It just creeps me out nowadays. Nowadays? Just nowadays? I honestly have a lot more that I could say, but I'm just glad I'm out of there. To this day, my dad still lives there, but he has admitted to seeing things and hearing things while being there, especially when he first bought it to fix it up for us to live there. How could he fucking not? All that shit going on, everybody else seeing it too? Jesus Christ. That's crazy. And sad. Crazy sad. And disturbing. Anyway, rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being least scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. If you have a story of your own that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. My birthday is Wednesday, so I may potentially go live that night. I'll see you on the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
A spooky scary story time from another first responder, a nurse named Alicia, and she said she works at a level 1 trauma center in adult emergency room services, and she's had a few strange experiences over the years, over her career, but this experience really stands out as the strangest. So this woman comes in with chest pain, and she's taken a triage, and she's explaining that she's had this long history of heart problems, and so she's admitted to a room rather quickly. And in the room, once she's hooked up to cardiac monitors, they are doing all kinds of tests, and the doctor is saying out loud what kind of blood work he wants done, and he also orders an EKG, which Alicia explained to me as basically a snapshot of cardiac activity so they can make sure that she's not having a heart attack. And as this is all going on, Alicia's explaining to the patient what's happening. She's explaining to her why the blood's being drawn, why they ordered an EKG, and what that will show. And as she's talking to the patient just freezes, and her eyes roll back, open, and her head fell back, her heart flatlined, and the doctor's yelling for help. The room fills with other people very quickly, and they're working on this patient to get her heart activity back to normal. And they're working on her for almost 45 minutes when all of a sudden they get cardiac activity again. I'm not sure where in this 45 minutes her heart started beating again, but Alicia says they were doing CPR, they were doing all kinds of things to basically bring her back. And as she starts to come back, she looks at Alicia kind of like half eyes open, and she goes, "Pop says to have your heart checked." Alicia asks her to repeat what she just said, and the woman says, "I didn't say anything." And she looks around the room, and everyone's kind of looking strangely at this woman. She's never met her before, and they're asking this woman all kinds of questions, and she believes that she had just simply passed out for a moment. Had no idea that she flatlined or anything like that. But Alicia didn't know how to tell this woman or anybody else standing in the room that almost 2 years to the date, her father-in-law had passed away, who she called Pops, a heart attack. And so she goes home and she thinks about this for a few days because she's like, that's so strange. And she decides that she's just going to take the warning and she's going to go have her heart checked, even though she's had no health problems before. She comes home from the doctor. She ends up having to wear a device for about a week to monitor her cardiac activity. And it turns out she has an arrhythmia, which basically means that it's irregular heart activity. She hadn't known about this before, and she assumed it was just from an overconsumption of caffeine. But either way, she's on medication for it now, and she's supposed to decrease her caffeine intake as well. Luckily, nothing worse ever happened, but she did say that had it not been for this patient calling out this strange warning from Pops, she wouldn't have known, and who knows what would have happened. I love first responder stories. If you have a story that you think nobody else would believe from work or otherwise, please send it in. We would love to hear it.
This man right here was the victim of one of the darkest and scariest black magic uses ever. It all started in 1991 where this man right here, whose name was Christopher Case, met a woman in San Francisco. Now, from Christopher's point of view, this was a normal meeting, okay? Him and the woman were just friends, but from the other side, the woman's point of view, well, it was different. See, the woman he was meeting was completely in love with him, okay? She even tried to raise him multiple times, going like, you know, this Loki could be us. The only problem is this man, Christopher, is not interested at all. Each time she tries to flirt with him, he go like, you. Oh yeah, they were clearly not seeing things in the same perspective. She tried to give him multiple hints, and Christopher would go like, yeah, no, I'm good. This thing happened multiple times until the woman realized that he is not in love with her and he'll never be. And when she learned that, she got mad, I mean really mad, and this is where everything will change. Because after a while, the woman spoke again, and this time she admitted that she was a witch and that she placed a curse on him. Yes, out of nowhere she said that, and she even precised that the curse that she placed on him is so strong to the point where he will not even survive until the end of the month. After that she admitted that she was a witch and that she had placed a curse on him, Christopher's reaction was like, do 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 do. Obviously, he did not believe her. She was talking seriously about a serious topic, but he was just there trolling. After a while, Christopher's friends began to notice that Christopher is not going outside like he used to, and now he's always staying inside his house. Literally became a prisoner in his own home, surrounded him and his bed by salts, kept burning candles, and always had the lights turned off. Even told his friends that he keeps seeing entities and they are trying to attack him. He also precised that these entities he keeps seeing always try to attack him at night when he's sleeping. Okay, now some of you might be like, okay bro, he's just imagining stuff, he's being paranoid. Well no, the problem is Christopher really had injuries everywhere, and according to him, these are the entities attacking him. He stayed like this for a long time, living in the dark, alone, lighting candles, putting salt everywhere. He was convinced that all of this was because of the woman who placed the curse on him. After a while, and precisely on April 18, police finally came to check his house after what they heard, and sadly, they found him unalived. They found him inside his bathtub, kneeling like he was doing a ritual. Bathtub didn't have water, it was just his body, and it was full of injuries. After the autopsy, it turned out that Christopher had no signs of poisonous, no signs of alcohol, and no signs of trauma, meaning that the man was completely fine and he was not under anything. Oh, this is why some people believe that the woman he met was really a witch and she really did use black magic on him. Other people don't agree with that. They say that he believed what she said, so it got him scared and he terrified himself until he passed.
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
I think I've found a family of Bigfoot. Now, over the years, I've been tracking Bigfoot using satellite images. A couple years ago, I happened to be looking in a location that I felt had a high probability of being home to Bigfoot. I discover this strange anomaly. And when I looked clearly at it, I said, hey, that is Bigfoot. So I thought maybe this could be something like a tree or a statue. So I took other satellite images from the same exact area and I compared them. And I realized this object was moving. It was not stationary. But not only that, I found another anomaly in the same area and another one. And then occurred to me that I was tracking a family of Bigfoot. Now, it appears that there are 2 adults, 2 juveniles. They stay within this 30-mile radius. They prefer to be near this water source. It seems like they have a diet of fish. And this location is in California, but I will not give the exact location because I don't feel that that information should be disclosed. So the next step for me would be to confirm these satellite images and to see if they are actually there. So this might possibly be something very big. You're going to want to stay tuned and watch, because we might potentially discover Bigfoot on here. There's something definitely going on at Yosemite. Now, out of all the parks I've been to, it is by far the creepiest. There was this man named Tom. Tom and his friend Benny, they decided they were going to go hiking in northern Yosemite, which happens to be the most remote part of the park. Now, they set off on this 10-mile hike, and they got to about the 4-mile marker when Benny had to use the restroom. So he goes off the trail into the woods, and Tom waits for him. Well, 5 minutes pass, Benny doesn't return. 10 minutes pass, he still doesn't return. 15 minutes pass, and he still hasn't come back. So Tom's like, maybe I should go check on him, like something might be wrong. So he heads off the trail and he goes into the woods, into the direction Benny went. As he's walking through the woods, he's yelling, "Benny, Benny, where are you?" And he doesn't hear anything. But that's when he realized, like, he didn't hear the birds chirping. He didn't hear any insects. It was completely quiet. Then he hears Benny's voice say, "I'm over here." So he goes in that direction. And he follows the sound of Benny's voice. But then he comes out to the spot and he sees Benny is on the ground. Something has attacked him and he is not moving. But he still hears Benny talking. And when he looks up and over in front of him, he sees this very large man that he described had the face of a deer, but it was human. He said he took off running as fast as he could through the woods. This thing began to chase him. He would go one way and this thing would be in front of him. He would go the other way and it would still be in front of him. He could not get away from it. Eventually, he makes it back to the trail. And as he's running along this trail, he smacks into someone. And as he looks up, it's Benny. And he goes, "Hey, Benny, like, what happened to you? Where'd you go? Like, are you okay? Are you hurt?" And Benny's like, "Well, you know, after I went into the woods to use the restroom, I heard you calling my name, telling me to follow you. So I went in that direction, and I ended up here." So he tells Benny, he said, "That wasn't me. We need to leave now." So they take off running as fast as they can, and they make it back off the trail. And as they are leaving this section of the park, they could hear these loud screams coming from behind them. One thing I've noticed about cats is they always have the ability to pick up the supernatural. Now, there was this woman named Alex. Alex was from Santa Monica. And she lived in this small apartment with her black cat named Miles. Now, one night, she was asleep. She awoke to the sound of a commotion coming from her living room. And it was these loud meows, and there was some sort of banging noises. So at first she thinks something's wrong with my cat. So she jumps out of bed. She heads into the living room. And as she goes into this dark room, she feels Miles rub up against her leg. But as she reaches down to grab him, she notices he's not there. So she flips on the lights, and as she looks around the room, Miles is nowhere to be found. So she goes back to the bedroom, and that's when she notices Miles is under a blanket in her bed. He's shaking and he's terrified. So this kind of creeps her out. Now, fast forward a couple weeks after this, she's once again asleep in bed when she starts hearing these meowing sounds. She said the meowing sounds almost sounded like it was trying to push out words. But she notices her cat is laying right next to her in the bed. So she's like, where is that sound coming from? So she gets up out of bed. She starts looking around the house. And that's when she realizes this sound is coming from behind her front door. So she goes over to the peephole and she looks out and she sees this long-haired, pale man meowing outside of her door. So she immediately runs, calls her friend. He comes over. He searches the outside of this apartment. He doesn't find anyone. The next day, she goes to the property manager and asks them to pull up the security cameras. And they do. And at the exact time that she heard this sound and she sees this man outside her door, there was no one there.
One afternoon in the summer of 2006, a 70-year-old man named Ma Qingmao and several of his family members walked out of their house in Luowan Village, which was a very small community in rural China. Luowan Village was known for being this beautiful, historic place, and as Qingmao and his family walked along, they passed by these beautiful, lush fields and saw these tall mountains off in the distance. But they also passed by something that made Qingmao and his family all very sad. The charred remains of dozens of burned out buildings were just littering the landscape. So Qingmao had lived in this village his whole life, and he remembered when it really was this happy, tight-knit community of over 100 people, and it really was just this picturesque place to live. But 3 years ago, that had all changed, and life in this village really became one disaster after another. There had been not one, but two enormous fires, which were caused by faulty wiring, but they had destroyed all these homes and businesses and all these historic buildings. I mean, it really kind of like changed the entire face of this town, and they still hadn't rebuilt it yet. But as bad as those fires were, it was actually what happened after the fires stopped burning that really made this place a nightmare on earth. And it was that, for whatever reason, the mortality rate in this little village in China just spiked like mad. It was like all these people were just dropping dead out of nowhere. And it got to the point where the villagers were scared that like some illness was plaguing them, some unseen plague they didn't even know. And it got so bad, so many people were dying, that they brought in the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC. They came in and actually did a full-blown investigation of this village. And they concluded that there is no connection between all these deaths. All these people that are dying in your village are dying from common illnesses or old age. Like, these are natural deaths. It's just this sort of anomalous spike in the mortality rate, and it's unfortunately, following this horrible tragedy, which were these fires. So it's basically like a tragic set of coincidences that these terrible things are befalling the village all at the same time. But a lot of people, including Qingmao, didn't buy that what was happening was natural. Instead, a lot of people began to think that their village was cursed. And so Qingmao and his family, they walked past all these burned out buildings, and they made their way towards the center of the village where there was a temple, because there was going to be yet another funeral for another person in their village, a young woman who had died inexplicably, at least in the eyes of the villagers. It didn't make sense she had died, but, apparently it's, a natural cause according to the CDC, but they were going to another funeral. And so into the temple they went, and before long, the procession began. Later that night, Qingmao stumbled his way through the dark streets of the village towards his home. Following that funeral, Qingmao and his family had gone to the deceased woman's family home for this big ceremonial dinner that was typical after these funerals. And Qingmao's family, they had basically left pretty much right after the meal itself. But Qingmao, he was feeling kind of down, like many people in the village, considering their sort of cursed status as they believed. He had stayed behind, and he had continued eating and drinking some alcohol and talking with his neighbors. Now he was finally on his way back home. But as he walked, he suddenly felt this really sharp pain in his gut, and it hurt so bad that it was making it really hard to walk. And so Ching Mao clutched his stomach and really had to force himself to keep moving one foot in front of the other. And then finally, when he got to his home, he opened up the front door, but the pain was so blinding that he just screamed out for help and then collapsed onto the ground right inside the house. And then Ching Mao, as he's laying on the ground, he began vomiting uncontrollably onto the floor. And then he just passed away right there, right in front of his whole family. Now, Ching Mao himself was not like a hugely influential person in this village. He'd been there his whole life, and everybody knew him, of course. But there was just something about his death that felt really monumental. It was like everybody in the village felt it, that when he died, for no apparent reason really, it just felt like enough is enough. There is no way these deaths that have ravaged our village are natural. It's not possible, and we will not take that as an answer any longer. And so the village director, who basically is like the mayor of the village, he wound up getting in touch with the provincial health department, and he told them what was going on and what the CDC had already communicated to them and how they didn't buy it. And so this health department, they sent out 20 experts to this village, and they did this big investigation to try to figure out, like, is there something causing all these deaths? Is it linked to the fires in some way? Like, what's going on in this village? And you know what they came up with? Well, turns out it's all natural. There's nothing wrong here. We believe what the CDC said. There's basically no issues whatsoever. You have nothing to worry about. And the village said, no. We still don't believe that. This is not acceptable. And so they went back to their village director and they said, you got to do something else because this is not acceptable. And he agreed. And so he actually got in touch with the police, just the local police, and said, hey, you come in, you investigate this, try to see if there's something, anything that they have missed that could maybe explain why so many people are dying in this village. And so the police, they come into this village and they do this broad strokes, very wide sweeping investigation, and they do find something. And what they discover completely explains what's going on in this village. It would turn out the village's doctor, their one doctor, was this guy named Ma Foman. And Ma was not really a doctor. He had basically read a couple of medical books. That was the extent of his training. He was not a doctor. And so he's the guy they're going to whenever they have any medical issues, and he has no idea what he's doing. But he benefited from people getting sick because he's the town doctor. And so you have this guy who can't help you, pretending to help you, likely making it worse, who profits from illness in this village. So that's bad. But it gets worse. Ma was also the owner of the funeral home in this village, the one funeral home. So if his crock science, his crock medicine didn't save you, or if you didn't inexplicably get better basically on your own and you died, he also profited on you. So basically, Ma Foman had a monopoly on suffering in this village. If you got sick, he made money. If you died, he made money. The only way he didn't make money is if you lived. And for a while, Ma Foman just kind of allowed this setup to run as is. He didn't influence it at all. He just was a fake doctor and was the funeral director. But in time, he wanted more money, and so he began poisoning the village's water supply with cyanide, because then you have more people getting sick, makes more money, and more people dying, makes more money. But even that still wasn't enough for Ma Foman. He needed more death and suffering. And so those fires, that was not faulty wiring. That was just luck on Ma Foman's part that he wasn't caught. That was pure arson. He burned that place down, killing people in the process. Because again, he's got this monopoly on death and suffering in this village. And so in the end, the police who came in, they did this investigation and they discovered that those fires were actually arson, and it eventually led back to Ma Foman. In total, Ma Foman killed 76 people. All people that he lived with. These are like his friends and his family. These are his people. He killed 76 of them. And so he was ultimately convicted of murder and he was sentenced to death. Late at night on October 26th, 1968, a 72-year-old woman named Ethel Harris was sitting in her living room in Toledo, Ohio, when her phone rang. And the first thing she did when it rang was looked at the clock. It was 10:30 p.m. Like, this is not when people called her. And so, worried something was wrong, she got up and she answered the phone and she said hello. And on the other end of the line, somebody said back, "Hey sis." And Ethel immediately knew who this was. It was not a sibling, despite the greeting, "Hey sis." It was someone that was very close with her and her husband, Dawn. In fact, this person who she was speaking to was Dawn's best friend, a 59-year-old man named Lee Epps. And for decades, Lee and Ethel and Dawn had lived next to each other. They were neighbors. And basically every day, they were at each other's houses together. I mean, they were super duper close. But Lee had eventually moved to another town, and so they didn't see each other as much. But they did get together a fair amount. And also Lee very regularly would call the house and just check in. And so Ethel's thinking, okay, it's a little bit late, 10:30 at night, but it's Lee. So clearly he's just calling to check in. But before Ethel could really even respond to his greeting of, "Hey, sis," because that's what he called her, sis, he just kept on talking. It was as if, Ethel wasn't even there. He was just sort of delivering a message. He was like, "Hey, sis, I'm feeling really bad. Like, I've never felt this way before. And, I really need your husband, Dawn, to get in touch with me the moment he gets back." And then Lee hung up. And Ethel, after, the phone call died, she was really confused because one, it seemed like a sort of normal catch-up call, but he's saying something that sounded really serious, that, something's going on with him. But also two, what immediately stood out to her was, how did he know Dawn wasn't there at the moment? Like, he wasn't nearby. How could he have just guessed that Dawn wasn't home right now? Because Dawn wasn't. He was out. He was going to be home soon, but he was out at the time he said it. It was like he had this knowledge that he was gone. And so it just seemed odd that he knew that piece of information. And so because she was sort of confused by this call and worried about Lee, considering what he said, she tried calling him back. But Lee didn't answer. She tried several more times, never heard from Lee. And then eventually her husband, Don, he came home and she explained to him, like, "Yeah, I got this weird call from Lee. He said, he wanted you to get in touch with him as soon as he came back because he's not feeling good or something. I don't really know." And so Dawn's like, "All right, that's weird." So he tries calling Lee and Lee doesn't answer. And so at this point, Dawn, he's like, "Ethel, go over it again. Like, what exactly did he say? Like, did he sound scared? Did he sound confused? Like, what was he talking about?" And Ethel said, like, "I don't know. He just sort of stated that he just didn't feel good and he had never felt this way before and he just really wanted to talk to you, Dawn. But again, he mentioned you were out of the house. I don't know how he knew that. And he said to have you call when you came back. That's really what happened. I don't understand it either." And so because Ethel and Dawn really didn't know what to make of this, and just given the fact that maybe Lee could be in trouble, they were like, "You know what? Let's just drive over to his house in the other town and just check on him. Just make sure he's okay." So they hop in the car, they drive to Lee's house, and Lee's not there. And so even though it was late at night, Ethel and Dawn really were worried about their friend, and so they began knocking on neighbors' doors to see if anybody knew where he was. But it would take a while, but eventually one of the neighbors said that Lee actually was at the hospital. And at this, Ethel and Dawn, it's like their worst fears are confirmed. Something really is wrong with their friend. And so they went to the nearest hospital, which is called Mercy Hospital. And when they got there, they learned that yes, Lee was admitted to the hospital, but unfortunately, he was dead. And this on its face was of course shocking news for Ethel and Dawn. I mean, they did not expect to find out that their friend of many decades was, abruptly and sort of inexplicably dead. But that was far from the most shocking thing they learned. When they spoke to the medical staff about what actually happened to Lee, they would eventually tell Ethel and Dawn that after some complications, Lee ultimately passed away at precisely 10:30 p.m. the previous night. His actual time of death exactly coincided with the moment Ethel got that phone call from Lee, where he said to her, "I just don't feel right. I've never felt this way before. Please, when your husband Don gets home, have him call me." Ethel and Dawn have no way to prove this, but they believe that that phone call was actually Lee's spirit, his soul, trying to talk to his best friend one more time before he passed away.
There's an old saying that you should always close your curtains at night because you can allow what's outside to be invited in. Now, this is a story from Eastern Tennessee. There was this man named Levi, And Levi said he lived in this house that was right next to the woods. And he said this particular night, he went to bed as usual, and he started having this dream. And he said in this dream, there was this man staring at him from his bedroom window. Said he had pale white skin, no nose, no mouth, and these solid black eyes. And on top of his head, he had a couple scraggly pieces of hair. And he said he was just looking at him in this dream. And then all of a sudden, he said he heard a voice say, "Come outside." And he wakes up, and he said right away he looked out his window, and sure enough, that man was standing outside of his window. And then he just took off into the woods. So he was kind of a little freaked out by that, but was like, maybe I was just dreaming that still, and it was all in my head. Until he looks at the window and he sees what looks like a face print. A couple weeks later, David said, he goes to sleep, and this time he has a dream. He's in his house and he's walking into his kitchen. And he said when he looked out his back kitchen door, he could see this same man, creature, whatever you want to call it, outside on his back porch. And he said this thing was sort of bent over and it was pacing back and forth, just moving its shoulders. He said it then stopped at the door window and it turned and it looked at him and it said, "Come outside." And he said he woke up and he was like, man, that dream just felt like really real. So he walks out to his back porch and he looks, there's no one out there. But when he looks down at the snow on the porch, he can see what look like footprints. So David didn't know, Levi didn't know what to make of this. And he, at the time, just thought, it was just bad nightmares he was having. So a couple weeks later after this, he goes to bed again one night. And he says he has this dream. And in this dream, once again, he's in his bedroom, laying in his bed. And he says he hears the front door open. And he said all of a sudden he heard footsteps kind of, moving through the living room, down the hallway. And then his door opens. And he said in walks this white creature, bent over with its shoulders kind of moving as it walked. And he said he came right over to his bed and it sat on his stomach. And he said the whole time he just couldn't move. He said this thing just kind of was like smiling at him as it's sitting on top of him. And he said it turned and it looked at him and it said, "I said, come outside." And then he said he lifted up his arm and it scratched him right on his side. He wakes up and it was like, that seemed all too real. He lifts up his shirt and in the place where he got scratched in the dream, he had this huge scratch. And so the next day, he goes to his neighbor's house and he's like, "Hey, this is going to sound weird, but like, have you ever seen sort of like a weird guy that's been, looking in windows or anything?" And he said his neighbor just turned and had this like shocking look on his face. And he was like, "You mean the pale white guy with, a couple strands of hair and the solid black eyes?" And he's like, "Yeah, how did you know?" And he goes, "When I first moved here, I used to leave my curtains open and I would see him peeking in my window and he would tell me to come outside." And he said, so after that, I started keeping my curtains closed at night. And so Levi said after he had heard that, he never slept at night without the curtains closed in his bedroom. There was this man named Jimmy, lived in British Columbia. He said that him, his wife, and his son, they moved into this beautiful home that was situated along the forest. And he said, they'd lived there about a year. Nothing really strange had happened. Until one night, he hears like this banging on his door. And he goes and he answers the front door. He said it was his neighbor down the road, Eldridge. And Eldridge said, "Can you give me some food? Like, I've been trapped outside for 3 days. Something is following me. Like, I haven't been able to eat. Please let me inside." So he lets Eldridge in the house and he gives him some food. And he said after he scarfed down all this food, he starts talking to Eldridge. And Eldridge said he was outside his house doing some work when he said he seen several of these very large men who were covered in fur. And he said they proceeded to chase after him and chased him through the forest and began like stalking him. And he couldn't get back to his house. And he somehow managed to come out to their place. And it had been like 3 days since he'd eaten or slept. So they call the Mounties come and they get, Eldridge situated and everything. Well, he said about 6-7 weeks after this had happened, his son wakes up one night screaming. And they run to his bedroom, and the son's like, there's a monster in my closet, a monster in my closet. And at this time, Jimmy's just thinking, this is a kid with an overactive imagination. He's probably just, having bad dreams. This went on for like several weeks and stuff, and they couldn't figure out like what he was talking about, a man in his closet. And he said the other weird thing is, from time to time, he'd get up in the morning and he'd find that the front door was wide open. So part of him started to think, like, is someone sneaking inside the house at night? So Jimmy decides to have his son sleep in his room with the mother, and he will sleep in the boys' room that night. So he goes to bed, and, after a couple hours of sleeping, he said he woke up. It was probably like 1 a.m, and he hears, like the closet door opening. And he said, as he looked in the closet door, he could see the outline of something very large and 2 yellow eyes just staring at him. And he said he just kind of jumped up, he yelled, and whatever this was, he said it ran out of the room, down the hallway, and out the front door. And he said after that, he decided to take his family and go somewhere else. And he said they ended up moving back to Vancouver because they were so terrified by what had happened. This next story actually comes out of Toronto. There was this guy named Jordan, and Jordan said that him and his girlfriend for some time lived in this apartment. And he said one of the things that they would often do is make this loud whistling sound as kind of like a joke they had of calling each other. And he said this one night they were making the sound back and forth and joking around. They decided to go to the bedroom, and they both lay down. Well, he said they made the sound a couple more times, and then they fell asleep. They wake up at 3:30 in the morning, and they start hearing the same exact sound coming from the living room. And Jordan's kind of like, is someone in the house? Is this an intruder? So he gets up, he searches the entire house. There's absolutely no one there. And he said another time, him and his girlfriend were in the bedroom, and they were sleeping. They both woke up. It was 3:30 in the morning. And they said the closet door just swung open, and they hear this loud scream that sounded exactly like his girlfriend, except she was right next to him. But he said the scariest thing that happened is him and his girlfriend went to bed one night, and he wakes up to his girlfriend saying, get up, you got to leave right now. You got to go. You're going to be late for work. And so he said he jumped out of bed and got ready real fast. And then he went into the kitchen to grab his work bag. And then he realized it was 3:30 in the morning. It wasn't time for work. So he's like, what is she doing? Why is she waking me up? He goes back to the bedroom. She is sound asleep. He wakes her up and is like, hey, why did you wake me up and tell me it's time for work? She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I've been asleep this whole time. And he said, he could tell that she wasn't messing with him. And he said after that, they lived there a few more weeks, but it always scared him because it sounded exactly like his girlfriend.
I love this story so much. It's absolutely fascinating. In 1985, a man named Thomas LeCount was trying to move his house. He was a grocer, and he thought that the perfect spot for his house was right across the lake on the east side of the property. Now, they lived in Gardner Lake, Connecticut, and this was wintertime. So he thought that the best way to move his 2-story house that was fully furnished, he thought that the best way to move this lake was to push it across the frozen lake. Now, one day they got it up and they started moving it across this lake, and it cracked. He underestimated how much this ice could hold. And so when the ice cracked, they tried to keep pushing it, but eventually they just couldn't do it. The sun went down, so they decided to come back at first light and try again. But what he didn't know is that the house would continue to sink while they were gone. Now, it would take several years to reach the bottom of this lake, but while the house was just stuck in the middle of this lake, kids would swim through it or walk through it and fish from it. It was a whole thing. You can kind of see now that the house is still underwater, but it's pretty, it's almost gone at this point. But the creepy part comes in where fishermen would say that at night they could hear a piano playing. Interestingly enough, there was a piano in the house when it sunk to the bottom of this lake. So who knows why this piano was playing? It wasn't reported that this house was haunted before it went into the lake, and it seems like it just kind of started. So is it a ghost? What is going on that fishermen are hearing this piano playing in the middle of the night? A small part of me wishes that it was some kind of sea creature, but what are your thoughts on this? Let me know down in the comments and follow for more.
What the fuck is wrong with people? This is the only time a Ouija board has entered a courtroom and been used as evidence. It's a crazy story. Trigger warning. This is the story of Carol Sue Elvaca, an Oklahoma mother and grandmother who was described as being fairly normal. That was until she stabbed her son-in-law to death, fled in the middle of the night, stealing her grandchildren in the car, also trying to unalive them too, in an attempt to save herself from evil. When the police actually arrested Carol, they had absolutely no idea of the story that was about to unfold. According to Carol, herself and her daughter Tammy decided to use a Ouija board one night and channeled some unseen entity who told them that basically their son-in-law was evil. She said that the Ouija board said that her son-in-law was possessed and he was going to potentially put the whole family in danger. And in Carol's mind, it was clear what she had to do. She had to eliminate evil from the family home. But after killing her son-in-law, she then became adamant that her 2 grandchildren must also have evil in them because, well, her son-in-law was their father. And that night that Carol decided to stab the son-in-law, she then took both girls, put them in the back of the car, and she drove up to the highway. She then decided to off-road the vehicle in an attempt to unalive her grandchildren, and it didn't work. So instead what she did was then got out of the car, pulled the girls out, and began throwing them into oncoming traffic. Carol was actually found not guilty of any crimes and pleaded insanity, and it was granted. She was then admitted to a psychiatric facility where she remained there for many years. But during the trial and through this whole process, they did in fact bring that Ouija board into the courtroom, and they used it as evidence.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. It was 12:49 in the morning, and I still wasn't asleep. The next day was my daughter's birthday, so I'd stayed up late decorating the house. Balloons, little surprises, trying to make everything perfect. By the time I finally crawled into bed, I was exhausted, but my brain just wouldn't shut off. I was lying there in the dark when I opened my eyes and noticed a light on outside my bedroom. That immediately bothered me because I know I turned everything off. The only thing I could think of was the nightlight in the bathroom right next to my room. So I figured maybe I'd forgotten to shut the door, so I got up to close it. And that's when I realized that it wasn't the bathroom light. It was the TV. The TV in the living room was on. I stood there for a second, trying to rationalize it. Weird stuff like this happens sometimes, right? Earlier that night, the TV had randomly shut itself off while my kids and I were watching it. Electronics glitch. Whatever. Still, it unsettled me. I turned off the TV and went back to bed, but now I really couldn't relax. That uneasy feeling had settled in my chest, and no matter how still I lay there, sleep wasn't happening. Eventually, I had to get up to use the bathroom. Everything was quiet, normal, but the moment I opened the bathroom door, the TV flickered on. Not gradually, not after a delay, instantly. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like it hit the floor. I didn't investigate. I didn't look down the hallway. I didn't even pause. I went straight back to my bedroom and shut the door. At that point, the TV could stay on all night. I didn't care. Now, I was definitely not sleeping. Earlier that day, I'd filled a helium balloon with a ribbon attached for my son. Somehow, it had drifted into my bedroom, and it was floating against the ceiling. As I lay there in the dark, wide awake, I glanced up at it, and that's when it dropped. Not slowly, like a normal balloon losing air would, not gradually. It dropped suddenly, straight down, until it was hovering about 2 feet off the ground. It genuinely looked like something had grabbed that ribbon and pulled it. I'm lying there staring at it, trying to slow my breathing, trying not to panic. My brain was scrambling for explanations. Maybe the air pressure? Maybe the ribbon on the balloon shifted. Maybe the remote has a sticky button and the timing is just messing with my head. But nothing I found explained how a helium balloon could drop that fast and that suddenly. And then there was the timing of everything. The TV turning on exactly when I opened the door, the balloon moving when I was already on edge. It just all felt wrong. Other strange things have happened before in this house. Little things. Things that are easy to ignore. But this felt different. Everyone I knew was asleep, and I was lying there alone in the dark trying to convince myself that there was a logical explanation, while feeling like I wasn't actually alone at all. And so I did the only thing I could think to do. I stayed awake.
These are 5 spiritual signs that you should never ignore. Starting off super strong with number 1 is when you have the sudden urge to avoid a specific person in your life, but this person has done absolutely nothing to you. But for whatever reason, it's almost like your soul screams anytime you come anywhere near this specific person. Trust it. That is literally your sixth sense picking up on something that you yourself haven't seen yet. Going along with number 1, number 2, when you feel the sudden urge to leave a specific location. You happen to be out to dinner, you're at the park, you're at the mall, you're at the movies, but for whatever reason, something like deep in your heart is telling you that you need to go. You need to go, especially when it's followed up by like anxiety, like you need to leave. I've had this happen to me many times where I felt the urge to leave and I listened, thankfully, and not long after that, I would find out that something horrific happened at that location. So always listen. And number 3, this one happens to me all the time, is when you keep having the same dream over and over again. That it's someone on the spiritual realm that is trying to get your attention, that's trying to get a message across. And the fact that you keep having the same dream over and over again is because you're not getting it. So the next time you keep having that reoccurring dream, once you wake up, just make sure that you write it down. I keep a notebook next to my bed. Write it down, because I promise you, when you wake up in the morning, you're not really going to remember much of it, and it's not really going to make a lot of sense. But if you have notes to look back on, the message will be clear. Let me know if you guys want a part 2.